All right, and so we're back, part two, discussing Extreme Rules, but kind of want to continue elaborating on what I finished off on last episode. I don't think scheduling should be too much of an issue because me and Dominic take mornings, and you and I usually take the afternoons because that's usually, when you're free from school and I'm free from my school as well.
Did you have a section today?
I did. So it's from 5 to 5:50, so I get that 10-minute window to transition into our little Zoom meeting after.
Got it. Jack, before we start talking the graps, on Friday's episode with Dom, you talked about and told us all that you were having some trouble scheduling 3 classes that accommodated your want and need to be entirely virtual. You had 2 classes signed up, ready to go. You were looking for a third. Did you find it?
I did end up finding the third, thankfully, and, obviously it's not only because a couple days have passed, but also because I found that third class. If we had recorded Monday, I was going to open up, hey, welcome to Rule 34 Podcast. It's your host, Jack, in a better mood than Friday. I was going to open like that because, as frustrating as it was, and it really did make me frustrated. I remember talking to my dad that night about it, telling him, I'm really frustrated because, this isn't the first time. When I was in my first year, there was, these courses that they wanted me to take, there's, required courses, and one of them was an English course, but, each quarter I kept trying to sign up for one. It was always, full the moment I logged on to start signing up for classes, and so it was kind of similar to that, where it's, I literally stayed on top of it this time. Anytime I got, my enrollment pass, I enrolled in these classes and stuff, and, it was just annoying to me that they couldn't find a way to accommodate.
Yeah.
Especially because my biggest complaint that I told my dad about that third class that I had to drop was, one, I think I elaborated on it on Friday, that I said it's part of my major requirement. Earlier, I think it was towards the end of my second year, end of second quarter, start of third quarter of my first year, that I emailed about, hey, I'm thinking of switching to this major. Who do I contact? They gave me the information. I contacted the person. They let me know, hey, you need to take 2 courses from this section of courses and 2 from here. And that one class was on that because they were you need 2 from here, 2 from here in order to switch to the major. And so I was okay, I can get that done. And I planned it out because I already had 1 from one section, and this class would have completed the 2 for there, and then the next quarter could be fulfilled with the 2 classes that are available for winter. And so I was okay, I can get this done by winter, and then by spring quarter of my sophomore year, I'm able to switch and start fully going full send in this major. But then this happened, and what annoyed me was it was they provided the reasoning being that they were saying was, oh, you need to be here in person to present this project, do the quizzes. And I was you provided quiz number 1 online, and your only stipulation was we had to go in to turn it in. One of my classes last quarter literally allowed for people to, for the sake of time, record their presentations and submit them asynchronously for the professor to play during lectures to save time. I was why can none of that be done here? And I got even more annoyed because then I saw that one of the classes that I dropped that said, oh, the section can't be taken online, they switched the section to online. So I was it was a frustrating process, but I started today. Since all the classes are online, and for the most part they're classes that just upload the lectures for you to listen to and take notes on your own time. I'm pretty confident in the courses I picked out in substitute of the previous 3, and I think I should be just fine, even though, this quarter kind of seems like a filler quarter because for the most part I think it's mainly just fulfilling my GE requirements rather than, much of major requirement.
Would you say that this quarter is a real Extreme Rules quarter?
Most definitely. Definitely.
Hey, now that you're in a better mood, and I know that you've got the glasses that you need, I can make this joke. You have you have a bad taste in your mouth and general a bad feeling about the folks that you interacted with because they were really, what's the word? Not being real truthful with you, or changing what they were telling you. At the worst time, right? I could tell you where you went wrong, Jack. It happened right from the beginning when you were dealing with people who are employed by the University of California, Los Angeles. I tell you, Jack, you should have known from a mile away that this was going to be trouble. Nope, I don't know about any of these stories happening at the good old University of Southern California. No, sir.
You're not wrong, sir.
We lost very badly on Saturday. Where it counts, and that's on the football field. Hey, Jack, let's talk about more people who lost. On Sunday, Extreme Rules. I believe the next match we're going to talk about is Mac's favorite wrestler, Damian Priest, defending his United States Championship against Sheamus and Jeff Hardy in a triple threat match that happens to not count disqualifications. By chance.
Yeah, by chance. And going back to what I was saying in the first episode, isn't it like, although he hasn't changed much, like, character-wise, isn't it, like, crazy to see just, like, how different main roster Damian Priest in terms of, like, booking and, like, the way crowd support is for him is such different than NXT Damian Priest? Like, when he was down there, he wasn't really doing much, like, throughout, like, 2019, 2020. And then he gets called up. He did the North American title. He won the North American title and, seemed to have pretty decent fan support. But, like, it was like, he was one of those guys that was like, oh, cool, he's there, but there's not much fan interest to him. And then next thing you know, he's on the main roster and all these people are interested in him. They're actually cheering the guy and stuff, and it was like, it's such a stark contrast from when, like, we were first starting reviews and we were just like, man, Damian, I mean, again, like I said, he hasn't changed much, but it was like, it started off with just like, man, Damian Priest is so monotone, he speaks like with little interest, and now it's like he's somehow somewhat still like that, but yeah, he's still got more fanfare here on the main roster than NXT.
Yeah, I'm excited for him and Marco. I think if we can take a step back and think about him at NXT, the North American champion, versus now, he's got color built into his, get-up in his hair, so, like, he's visually more interesting. I don't think he talks as with as much a monotone as he used to. I think there's some enthusiasm in his voice now when he talks, right? I haven't heard him talk in some time, but the fact that he's in this position means that he's improving in some places. But I think the biggest improvement is that over there at NXT, he was still doing that, like, LOL, OMG, I hang out with women in jacuzzis and drink champagne. I'm a rock star, kind of, maybe, sort of, right? Like, it was weird, and like, but I'm also an archer or something, and like this nowadays, maybe there's a little more focus. We got rid of the women and the jacuzzis, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe it was that time with Bad Bunny that we just sort of like imprinted on him as this, like, as a cool guy. That's all he is, Jack. And maybe that's what they were trying, but they were trying too hard in NXT. He's just a cool guy.
Yeah, he's one of the call-ups that, like I mentioned, that, it should give hope that future call-ups can be handled as well, because, like I said, they've shown time after time they can really do NXT call-ups well. It's just, for some reason, they don't do it on a consistent basis.
Hey, how about, too, I think it was only a couple of weeks ago that people were freaking out, Jack, universally, that Jeff Hardy was relegated to a 24/7 championship kind of, like, chase.
Yeah.
They're like, what are you doing to Jeff Hardy that I'm looking at him chasing Reggie, right? And I think a response to that, like an almost immediate and direct response to that, was involving him in the United States title picture. You're like, way to go, Jeff Hardy fans. This is your doing.
Yeah, and much to like that, Hardy was like really over. I mean, it's not surprising. It's Jeff Hardy. He's a man who's always been over the crowd, even when even when like TNA tried to turn him heel. It's like the fans aren't gonna boo Jeff Hardy. What are you doing? And so it's like here, it's like despite probably for the most part, even though when it comes to the mid card titles, we always know to never really be surprised by short runs and sudden title changes.
Right.
For the most part, even though people knew if Damian Priest more than likely wasn't losing here, they were still going crazy for Hardy in all his moments. Like that spot that I forgot what the spot was, but like where he got like a 2.9 in a pin. Like it was like 1, 2, and then right as it was about to hit 3, the person kicks out. That crowd was so convinced that was the moment where Jeff Hardy was winning, and they showed it. They went crazy.
Goodness gracious. Sheamus prevented him from hitting a swanton before hitting a flying knee drop to the champ for a knee. No, that's a Sheamus close 2 count. Hardy hit both men with a swanton, but wasn't able to follow up with the pin attempt. No, I was looking for it. I was looking for it in this recap that I'm cheating off of.
Well, I don't know if you saw this, but you mentioned it that the moment that Sheamus prevents Hardy from doing something and he hits him with his own top rope move, Sheamus goes up to the top, and to taunt the crowd, he starts doing Jeff Hardy's movements on the top rope.
His like finger thing,
yeah, like his entrance,
his like finger guns looking thing.
Yeah, like you just see Sheamus standing on the top. He kind of looks at the crowd. He's like, "Yeah, a big guy like me isn't supposed to be up here," and then he just starts hitting Jeff Hardy's like entrance movements, and then he just does his move, and it was such a surprise to see Sheamus do something like that.
That's like I think it must have been in No Mercy for N64. I think you can steal your opponent's taunts. You could steal their finisher, maybe not their taunt, but how funny.
Yeah, and I will admit though, it was a good match with decent spots, but it was kind of sloppy, and I think a lot of other people noticed that as well. There was a lot of moments where people looked like they were slipping up or they were out of place, So it wasn't a perfect match. It was a good, U.S. mid-card title match. And it was pretty good, but like kind of sloppy a bit, but,
I wonder who's responsible for the sloppiness. Could it be the 20-year veteran Jeff Hardy? Could it be the 15-plus year Sheamus? Or could it be Jack?
Damian Priest retains, and it's funny. I wrote this in my notes. I was like, "Oh, it looks like things are not done with Sheamus based off the post match." Damian Priest and Jeff Hardy get like a little moment of showing respect to each other.
So yeah.
And Sheamus kind of looks angry as he's leaving. And it's funny that I bring this up because it's funny that I wrote that down, and then the next night they have a rematch.
And Priest wins again, I think, right?
Yeah, Priest retains again. And
okay.
Who knows where things go now for him? Hopefully, fresh challengers.
You know what he's doing too? We're going to move on. I said he put a lot of color in his outfit, right? Like in his presentation. He's not just sort of jet black, Nikki Sixx in it.
Mm-hmm.
He not only built color, but he built red, white, and blue into his getup to sort of match his title reign, which I think is a nice touch.
Yeah, it's also a thing of I don't know if you noticed, like on his pants, but he has both the U.S. like flag kind of sewn into it and the Puerto Rican flag sewn into it.
Whoa! Nice touch indeed.
But decent match. Jeff Hardy turns heel in the eyes of Mr. Solis in the post-match as he looks towards the crowd and does Damian Priest's arrow thing.
Nah, I love him. Nah, that's Jeff Hardy. I think, he's like Steve-O. He's like, yeah, man, I like your thing. You're like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, I think he's, giving him the business, but also seemingly supportive, but I could hear him do that. Yeah, man, I like your thing. I like you do that thing when you do that. I'm definitely clean, I promise.
And then we move on to the next title match, another title match. Rematch from SummerSlam, and thankfully this time given a proper match, which, should have really happened at SummerSlam, but gotta set up for future pay-per-views in such confusing ways. SmackDown Women's Champion Becky Lynch defending against former champion Bianca Belair.
Jack, do you have any opinion one way or the other about Becky Lynch's recent change in character?
I don't really have any. The one thing I will say, I will give her credit for getting the fans to boo her when it seemed like, for the most part, ever since the SummerSlam incident happened, everyone claimed she wouldn't be able to get booed.
Yeah.
That she'd be too over to get booed, and yet here she is achieving those boos, so I'll give her credit for that. And really, I thought she couldn't look even more like a star, but Bianca really has started to look more and more like a star based off of just how much fan support she got during this build-up.
Cool.
And, it was a decent match. They kind of had some pretty good chemistry, and it was kind of a match based off reversals, similar to the Danielson Omega match on Dynamite, the 30-minute time limit match. It was based a lot upon reversals and preventing each person from hitting their finishers, because if I remember correctly, I'm trying to think, just solely based off my memory of both matches, I don't think in either match a single person hit their finisher, because it was all about hitting reversals and preventing them from hitting that big move, especially this time being that Bianca was more than looking out for that. I don't know what their name for is. I just me being rude and a troll, I call it the bootleg rock bottom.
It's funny. It's not any better of a name. I think I've heard it called the manhandle slam. Because, it's a forced pun with man and pump handle, or manhandle and pump handle. But, pump handle, it's nowhere near a pump handle slam. And a pump handle slam is a terrible move to even conjure in the mind. Why would you remind me about that move when you're trying to get me excited about this anything,
Yeah, and I'm usually one to appreciate whenever Mauro Ronaldo would commentate, and he'd always know what the move's name was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I think I'll stick to calling it the bootleg rock bottom.
You can also call it an uranagi.
True.
Which is what the rock bottom is as well.
True.
If you want to if you want to get serious about it.
But it was a decent match, but doesn't get a proper finish, as out of nowhere, no entrance music to give it away, no, camera cutting. Because I forgot to mention last match, they almost did a similar spot to, I don't know if you remember when Jeff Hardy won the WWE title. And they had it, yeah, and where they had it, that it was focused on Triple H, getting the pin, and you didn't see Hardy coming in with the swanton. He comes from off of camera. They almost had a moment like that in the U.S. title, except right as they're barely going for the 1 count, they immediately cut to show that Hardy's on the top rope going for the swanton. But here they luckily don't give it away that Banks is running down. They only just barely cut to when she's about to slide into the ring to really give it that oh, this is a huge shock. They didn't cut to when she's making her way running down the ramp. They cut to when she was just entering the ring to interrupt this match.
In a sport about moments, right, Jack? Not matches and not even stories or programs. I'm talking moments. I am always thrilled when I could see in the background the crowd turn their attention, get up even sometimes, and reacting to something that's off camera. Yeah. I'm all about that. If I could see them get really excited, I'm excited, and then you see somebody that they'd already seen enter the room.
Yeah, Man, I feel like I'm the biggest tag team supporter in the world anytime I talk about it on the podcast, but I think that's like one of the great parts always of tag team wrestling is like whenever the second guy is coming in to break in a tag, when it's done just right, it's like you see the crowd like start to get up or like, start to look in a certain direction, and that's because off camera, here comes the second guy to make this a false count,
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
one of the best moments I think I can remember is oh man, I think it was Takeover Brooklyn. Man, was it 2 or 3? I don't remember. It might have been 3, but it's when Drew McIntyre is celebrating beating Bobby Roode for the NXT title, and then you just see kind of all the you just see Fish and O'Reilly are standing in the corner, and he goes to them, and you see all the crowd rising and looking towards the corner, and you're like, what the heck is all the crowd looking at when they're over here? Oh, look, it's Adam Cole coming through to debut in NXT.
Yes. Yeah, yes, exactly that.
Yeah, or like when John Moxley showed up at a Double or Nothing, all the crowds like turning to him for him making that first.
And he's taking the long way to the ring, right?
Yeah, going through the crowd, so it truly gives you that like, hey, look at where all the crowd's looking. This is the reason why he's actually in there with them.
So welcome back, Sasha Banks. Exciting jolt to the women's division on SmackDown that was long overdue.
Yeah, and I feel like SmackDown has really been getting like such good treatment. Like I've always considered like SmackDown like the sleeper show because it's always been considered the B show in comparison to Raw, because Raw was always like the A show, the one that's been established for years and stuff.
Right.
They were always one that's like, they were the ones that even though they weren't given much, they like made with what they had. They were the like, ruthless aggression era, PG era. Even though they got like mainly the scraps, if you want to say, even though the scraps they had still were really good. It was like compared to Raw, they were always usually left with lesser star power, lesser big names. They still managed to be really good, and it feels like such a like reverse of that now, where it's like SmackDown kind of has gotten all the big names, especially this year. They have Edge, Rollins, Balor,
Reigns,
Zayn, Reigns, Lesnar, Belair, Banks now. They have all these huge names in all their divisions, and like especially when you look at the women's division, even the women who aren't getting as much time are still, showing like at least like they're showing that like it's better than whatever the Raw women's division is getting right now.
I feel you, Jack. Yes.
Which is why like when I saw this ending, I was like, my first question was, is it gonna be a triple threat, or is the draft gonna change things? Because I don't expect Banks to get drafted to Raw, because why have her interrupt this match if you don't get no payoff to it? And you want to think to yourself, well, Belair kind of deserves a payoff to getting her match interrupted, but who's to say that the draft doesn't interrupt that?
We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, especially because as you mentioned at the start of the first episode, they're no longer, or they didn't really have to worry about it in the past, but like now they're like, as you mentioned, they're really having to cater to both networks. So it'll be interesting to see how this draft goes down, because even like last year and like previous years, there was never really any like talks of either a network requiring specific things, wanting specific things. It's like this is like the first year where it's like, yeah, they both kind of want the same equal treatment, so it's going to be really tough to see how you do this split.
Yeah.
And like it's not as simple as I always make it sound, but like there's the part of me that's always like, well, to satisfy both, why not just end the brand split, so you won't have to worry about which brand has more star power if the star power is all appearing on two shows.
Yeah.
But I know there's going to be issues with that where it's like, well, we get enough rematches already. Imagine if everyone was on the same brand and both shows kind of had to continue continuity. It's like we'd probably see the same matchups for 2 weeks in a row, meaning 4 times within 2 weeks.
Yeah, they are definitely making things harder for themselves than they need to, right? Like, I don't think the answer is end the brand split. I think the answer is lean in on the brand split and have them be two separate bodies of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's so far one group of people working both shows, so both feel the same, right?
Yeah.
I think you go, all right, this is the group that works with this network. This is the group that works with this network. Let the best man win. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like
because both brands, Raw and SmackDown, I have be worthwhile to check the rosters, but both of them have an ample amount of people to put on a 3-hour show.
Yeah, and there's like a couple solutions that I've seen to really like solving, as you say, lean into the brand split. When it first happened back in 2016, like What Culture did one of those like how they should book the brand split. I really liked it because it was like the way they like really went into it was that the one thing that they shouldn't have done, which is you've kind of seen, it's been like one of like the biggest issues, is the tag team and women's division should have just been like the two titles that like float between the two, like they appear on both brands, because or it's either the way I see it was either have the titles float between the two, so that the divisions are one, they're not split, making them smaller than they need to be,
Yeah.
Because it's like, look at Raw's women's division, it's Rhea and Nikki just went to the tag division, so it's like, what, Charlotte, Alexa Bliss, she's gone now. Who's her next challengers? It's like a women's division would look much better if it was Charlotte, Bliss, Rhea, Becky, Bianca, Bailey when she's back. I brought up Sasha, I'm pretty sure. Basically all these women's, like, the division looks bigger, especially the tag team divisions look bigger. Even though they're doing pretty well establishing, it looks bigger if it's just a one. Or the solution that they had that they had presented back then was assign, or their presentation was the tag titles float, but the women's division stays on one brand as like an exclusive. And as you're saying, changing up the presentation of the two shows so that they provide something different. It was like, hey, you want, women's wrestling, tune into Raw. That's like your incentive to tune into Raw. You want to watch women's wrestling? It's an exclusive to the Raw brand. And at the time when the Cruiserweight title was reintroduced and brought back, they were saying, yeah, maybe have the women's division exclusive here, and the incentive for people to tune into SmackDown, hey, here's the Cruiserweight division. Here's a bunch of, I don't know, people like not necessarily wanting to, saturate it, but they were saying like maybe keep like certain styles on one brand versus the other. Like maybe one brand has more technical wrestling and the other one has more like high flying spots and stuff. Basically leaning into it and providing such a stark difference between the two brands, rather than just, hey, we're pretty much the same shows and there's not a real difference other than who's competing on which brand. And even that doesn't matter because the draft happens yearly, so these people get swapped around, so it's like, yeah, you're probably going to see this guy on Raw in like a year or two anyways.
Say la vie. How much time we got?
16 minutes.
Just enough to talk about our main event. The match you told me, Jack, was pretty good. Would you say, Jack, this was the match of the night?
I would probably have to say yes, with Uso Street Profits being right behind it.
Wow.
And it was a great match. And it's only just about to be October, meaning we still have, October, November, December till we get to our year ends list. But I was, just typing up a quick draft of what I thought my top 10 list would be at the end. And when I was thinking about wanting this match on there, because I really did enjoy it. It was really good, but My issue with the match was the finish, and in typical evil style, the interference, as always.
You mean that dastardly Roman Reigns isn't fighting his own battles, Jack?
I mean,
How dare he? The tribal chief is so tough. Why don't you be tough, man?
well, the only thing that these interferences prove to show is that Reigns is scared of Cesaro, because that was, or actually wait, never mind. Maybe that makes me think that maybe he's scared of everyone else but Cesaro, because Cesaro was the
that was
only
the
one.
one title defense where there was no interference.
Yeah, it's like everyone else was like Kevin. I mean, the Kevin Owens one, the interference really made sense because, as we covered back then, it was like Owens was always the one that was not only being persistent, like to Drew levels of persistent, but
Right.
he was the one that was always coming super close. So it made sense for Reigns to be paranoid of him.
Poor Cesaro couldn't even get a run in. A super kick to save it. To save face. So we called out all the stops for the Demon. Both Usos involved, or just one?
Both.
Did Paul Heyman get involved?
I don't think so. Surprisingly,
Okay,
but the Usos interfere, and then it was a really good match. It wasn't just like spots; like they really were really building up a lot of the different spots. So it wasn't just spot fest for spot fest type thing. It was really good. Balor was getting a ton of offense in, so it was like evenly matched and stuff. But the finish just really irks me to like what will probably be the surprise of people. They're probably gonna think that I'm mad about the spot that they did to protect the Demon Finn Balor. What I'm most angry at is that I get wanting to protect somebody, but why did we go to such extreme lengths to protect it this much? Because it was like
before you even tell me, Jack, what they did, what you classified just now as extreme lanes. I'm going to answer your question right now, Jack. Why do we go there? Because it's extreme rules, baby. We're going to go to extreme lanes. Jack, before we get to the match finish, there's one spot I saw on Instagram. Tell me if I'm describing this correctly. It's a double down, both men down at the outside. It seemed like all is lost. And then the room turned red, and there's a heartbeat, and the Demon is risen? Is that the case? Was he imbued with something that gave him more power to press on?
So this is part of what I was talking about just this extreme length to protect Balor, which, I mean, it shows how much they kind of care about him and the character, but I thought it was excessive. And it's funny because when this was happening, I had to mute the TV real quick so I couldn't hear what was going on in the commentary. All I noticed was that out of nowhere, the room goes red, and you just see Balor like flopping like up and down, like he's like supposedly still knocked out, like flopping his arms and legs up and down. And it wasn't until back when I went back to watch it and saw, okay, it was the heartbeat thing. But, he's doing that, and then his entrance music starts playing. He just pops up with, like, this adrenaline and starts going crazy. Like, he power bombs one of the Usos through the table and stuff. And then he finally gets Roman in the ring, and his theme is playing. And he's standing on the top rope. And then, oh no, the top rope collapses and Balor falls down. And it scared me for a second. Because when Balor fell, and the way he sat up, like, I don't know if it was just the angle he had his leg in, but for a second he scared me, and it looked like he broke his leg. And so I was like, oh, I know we're supposed to be getting extreme, but this isn't what I want to see. But then I just saw that was just him selling the leg, and then he gets up, spear from the head of the table, finishes off the match, and it was really fun. I really enjoyed it, but just the ending was. It was excessive to me.
So, Jack, I wonder, excessive. There's a man in the ring with a mouth with sharp teeth and a long venom-like tongue painted on his chest. But Jack, this is excessive. Jack, do you think on Friday we pursue a story where Finn is now on the hunt for who sabotaged that ring post?
I would love or I would like that to be a thing, because like what I've seen people presenting is like, oh, it kind of just seems too much of a cop out to say the Usos or Heyman like
Right.
interfered with it, especially
Right.
because it's like at this point, what more reason is there for Balor to face Reigns? Like,
You know,
I'd rather turn it into a story where someone new is
Mhm.
like it, like
makes me now it makes me long for the days where we could have inserted CM Punk's name here, Daniel Bryan's name here, right? It was Punk, Jack. Punk to WWE confirmed. We can't say that anymore. But here's hoping that there's some continuity, because it didn't look like it was a mistake, right? It didn't look like a critical production error, like two different languages commentating over each other, right?
Yeah.
This is something that was supposed to happen that happened.
Yeah, and I've seen like different ideas. I know he's had like a couple of matches on the indies and they signed him, so like, if we're doing this storyline, I mean, it depends, because they could go different ways. They can just have it being that someone was out for Balor. They could have it being that someone's now aligning with the head of
Reigns.
the table. And if they're gonna do an aligning with Reigns, it's like they could bring in, like I was mentioning, they recently signed him. I think his name is pronounced Sifa, the Usos brother. They have another brother named Sifa.
Yeah.
So
I know what you mean.
If they want him to skip NXT, they could introduce him like that, just being like, "Hey, it's a third Uso brother."
No way. That guy's greener than my ficus. You know what I mean? Like, no, we're not hot shotting him to smack down the bloodline.
Yeah, so it's like
that's some Marina Shafir, Jessamine Duke. Let's put the 4 horsewomen together for a WrestleMania main event, because that makes sense.
But
logic.
There's definitely ways they can go, especially because, like as you mentioned, they have rosters deep enough. They have enough people that are sitting and catering week after week.
Jack, there's so many people on this roster. You have a whole full roster of people you don't want it to be. You know what I mean? Like, let's end the podcast there, Jack. Let's talk about who we don't want to have sabotaged the turnbuckle, drawing Finn's attention. I'll start. Dolph Ziggler.
Baron Corbin.
Yes.
And with the draft coming up and rumors that NXT is involved, maybe they call up someone from NXT. And
whoa! Johnny Gargano was in the house the whole time, and he knew Balor uses the coup de grace, so he unscrewed that turnbuckle and hid under the ring the entire night.
Getting him back for TakeOver Portland.
Yes. Perfect logic.
Pops just said it's Naomi.
It's Naomi. Take that, Sonya Deville. I ruined your main event, kind of, sort of.
Oh my gosh, could you? It's gonna be. I'm just wondering, like, because again, the precedent that has been set by this company. I could just imagine, as we're talking about people who it shouldn't be. I could just imagine them taking someone who, like, their entire time in wrestling, both like whether they were on Independence or like in the WWE itself, they've been like nothing but like a good person, or they've had a gimmick that's like nowhere close to like being a heel that would sabotage someone like Finn, and just sticking them in that role and being like, yeah, look, now you're evil, now go out and like reason as to why for some reason you randomly went after Finn Balor in his main event.
You're saying that they're going to take Dominic Mysterio and he's going to come out and say he did it for The Rock.
It's definitely.
Shout out to all y'all who know exactly what I'm referencing when I say that. Jack just perfectly described the position Rikishi was put in 2001.
Yeah, it's nothing like going from a man who, danced around in the ring.
Beloved by all,
Beloved by all. His finisher was shoving his bum in people's faces to out of nowhere.
It was a literal, fart joke, you know what I mean? And, I also killed a man with my car because I did it for The Rock.
I'm glad you bring this up, because that's definitely what I have to add to the list now of explaining wrestling segments or stories to Dom. I want to see what Dom.
I don't care what anybody says. His theme song was incredible. Do you remember it?
Yeah.
I'm a bad man. Yes. Oh. I'm gonna look it up later.
Yeah, I definitely got to show that to Dominic. On
I think he was a bad man with a bad plan. It was so bad. It was so good. Yes, it was so bad. I know people disagree that this can even exist, but it is impossible for me to not enjoy that song.
So it's gonna be interesting to see what they go from here, especially with the brand. The one thing
you got my hopes up, Jack. Now I'm waiting for somebody to bust a bad man turn. You know what I mean? I want them to go complete. I wish Otis hadn't turned yet. This was the time to turn Otis. Right now.
Oh my gosh! It was. Did you see the memes where someone was like, where Balor was like stating all that, like, he's not done with John Cena, and so everyone's
yes!
like, John Cena makes his return.
Why? But we couldn't see him.
But real quick, the one thing I have to say about the brand split that I'm hoping they don't do is they don't repeat last year, where they have the opportunity to make fresh matchups, and they did with some, like they drafted Bianca over to SmackDown and stuff.
But what you're saying is don't draft two people in a program together to the other show where they're just carrying their drama to the other show.
I would never forgive them for having all those Rey Mysterio, Dominic Mysterio versus Rollins and Murphy matches happen on Raw, and the Raw pay-per-view matches. And then they present the draft, and you're like, oh, finally things are going to get switched up. And then all four men get drafted to SmackDown and carry over their feud for another, month.
You blankety blinks.
They really need to switch things up. Put people who have never switched brands onto other brands at this point.
And split the Mysterios up. Let's go. If you're not going to pull the trigger on the son-father storyline, sink or swim, Dom.
Yeah, so, as a common theme for Wendy's podcast, as I mentioned, we criticize because we wanted to see better, and we proved that and usually at the end of all our episodes, we're always saying we're optimistic for the future as always, even though you would think, what's there to be optimistic by a company that's, continually let down after time. They've, like I say, with the NXT call-ups and even, main roster stuff, they've proven that when they want to, they can, do good and really get people invested.
And I'll tell you what, it's happened the last couple of weeks. You get this sense that they're really feeling the heat put on them by those folks over on Turner's channel, because we got Bobby Lashley versus Big E in a cage.
Yeah.
And decisively, with Big E's win. So you're like, maybe this is going to force their hand, and they're going to have to start doing something good on purpose.
Can somebody force Big E's hand to change his finisher? I know we brought this up, I want to say almost a year ago, we brought this up saying, hey, if Big E's going to be a main event player, can you get a better finisher?
Jack, he hit it from the top rope. I mean, it makes it better. The biggest ending.
But
Ron Simmons, please give him the Dominator. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but about a minute 30 left. I'll finish off with this. The one thing I'll say is Big E's proving people wrong as well. That people kept saying he had to get more serious, or he had to fully change his character into a serious one. What I love about what Big E's
I am definitely glad he's still having fun out there, even as the top, title holder.
Yeah, and most importantly, what he's also showing is you don't have to be a serious character 100% of the time. He showed in his promo at Extreme Rules, he'll get serious when he needs to be, but other than that, he's going to have fun like he wants to.
Yep.
And it's honestly the same as how Drew was with his first run, He was like, hey, I'm still a baby face. I'm still, being a fun champion, but I'm getting serious when it's time for the match.
Hey, and with Drew coming out challenging him, we got babyface versus babyface. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. But with about 30 seconds left, we'll close here. I've been your host, Jack, joined by my fellow guest,
Mr. Solis.
I want to thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Rule 34 podcast. As always, if if it exists, we have an opinion on it. Thank you, and we'll see you hopefully next Monday for Dom and I to introduce a new era of the Rule 34 podcast.
Rule 34 Podcast 2.0.
2.0.